That's
Oh, 80s relics.
Hair products, right?
new wave.
Neon apparel.
The 80s were pretty neon, but oh my God, you look back, the fashions from that time.
Art Deco.
Miami Vice look, yeah.
It was chromatically bold that decade.
I have a ton of records from the 80s in contrast to the 60s. And it was just a matter of choosing a couple of records that I felt like talking about that I feel are not quite as well known as they ought to be. My first record is Sacrilege's Behind the Realms. Behind? Behind. I always want to say beyond. Behind the Realms of Madness. So this came out in 1985. Sacrilege were, I don't know if they were from Birmingham, England, but they were from, around that area, like English Midlands. Amazing how much great heavy music came out of that area in the 70s and 80s. Definitely one of the best. And one of the lesser heralded crossover records, crossover between metal and punk. If you listen to Crust of various kinds, or you listen to D Beat or something like that, then you definitely know this record. But otherwise, you might not. So Sacrilege, like they had punk roots, clearly. The lyrics are political, but they definitely really liked metal, particularly thrash, it sounded like. In contrast to most of the crossover thrash that was coming out at around this time, and that would come out in the years to come, that always kind of sounded thin. Like when punk bands went metal, they tended not to be that heavy. They tended just to be fast. There's exceptions, but I think that's generally true. This record is fucking burly. Like there is real low end. This is a heavy record, but it is also very much a punk record. Like it's both. Um, and it's got a female vocalist named Tam, um, who's just awesome. And it's just there's only 6 songs on this, but they're all basically perfect. They're all basically perfect. This is a ferocious feral album. Like these are thrash riffs, basically. It's just, yeah, this is a really, really great record, and I can't recommend it highly enough. So that's number one. Number two, thought I would go in a slightly different direction. So Ursula K. Le Guin with Todd Barton, and I got to look at it to, yeah, Music and Poetry of the Kesh. So Ursula K. Le Guin, noted, brilliant sci-fi slash fantasy or speculative fiction writer. This record plays and feels like some Lost Folkways record, maybe. Something that came out on None Such, maybe in the 70s or something like that. It feels ethnographic. There are instruments that Le Guin had made up, that Todd Barton went and built to play on this record. In a way, this is kind of a soundtrack to a Le Guin book. This was 1985, I believe. It was recorded on cassette, which originally released on cassette, which seems kind of perfect. Because there's definitely like a little bit of a new agey kind of private press vibe to this. But what you get from track to track is you get some spoken word, sort of field recording kind of sounding stuff. You get a cappella songs and well, poetry. But anyway, so it's a fascinating record. As I said, I haven't read the book. You don't need to read the book to enjoy it. It's a good vibe.
I have some 80s relics, and this is one by the Flesh Eaters, A Minute to Pray, A Second to Die from
Good record.
1981. It is their second record, I believe, full length. Um, and it comes out of LA punk, that scene. In fact, I saw them at the Mask, and it was some kind of voodoo ceremony, what I witnessed. But this album is singular in for their repertoire and for LA punk. I mean, there was a faction of LA punk like the Gun Club that was more roots based. They really took it to a different level with R&B, rock and roll, blues, country, and 50s sort of rock and roll. Yeah, with saxophone and marimba. So a lot of these are extended tracks where the sax is filling in, but it's got this incredible lockstep rhythm in the bass and the drums. Don Bonebrake from X is playing drums, and I think John Doe is playing bass. But they really arrived at something that's different than punk. Although the song forms are punk based in their composition, there's because of the instrumentation and his crazy unhinged vocals, he's a
Yeah.
great punk screamer. Really.
Yeah. Chris D was punk all the way through and how he sounded.
Yeah, Chris D, he wrote for Slash Magazine and he delivered the most devious voodoo inspired vocals here. It's got a swampy atmosphere, it's haunting, hypnotic, but all the music, every track has this sort of swagger that is undeniable, and that's why I like it. And of course, the songs, I'm not sure exactly what they're about, but Digging My Grave, Pray Till You Sweat, Satan's Stomp, See You in the Boneyard is a standout. It's been reissued on Superior Viaduct, and so it's a rock record. That's where I would keep it. And Pylon, Chomp. And it's got this, serrated edge with a pinking shear sort of look. So conceptually, it holds together. Um, this is their second record from '83. It comes out of the Athens new wave scene, but it is not new wave. It's nothing like B-52s or REM. This is authentically post-punk with just a touch of no wave. So it keeps it fresh. They clearly created their own space. Yeah, and it's distinctive. It's not the Talking Heads, it's not Devo, because it's more subtle and guarded. Well, the music is got these very structured bass lines with interlocking drums. Guitar is lean and intricate. There's not much going on there, but the singer, she is singing with this possessed and dour sort of subconscious mining of the id, which I think is what makes it distinctive. I mean, she's got a great voice, but it's really a murmur here. You really have to listen and try to understand it. But, beyond all that, pretty catchy in parts because of, some of the melodies that are woven through the tracks.
Chris was talking about all the excellent music to come out of Birmingham, of a heavy variety. I've got some music. Well, I guess it's heavy too. It's just it's psychologically heavy. In fact, it's psychologically suffocating, and this is some real great despondent junkie music. Felt, right? That's Felt, the strange idols pattern and other short stories, which is kind of a strange name for a record that has no narrative component to it whatsoever. But Felt's kind of a weird band to begin with. This is their second record after The Splendor of Fear. Just to give you an idea of the prevailing mood, here written on the back is, we might as well all stay in our rooms until we die. So this is music for unhappy shut-ins or people who are unhappy because can bestir themselves and get out into the world because they need to score some smack. It's actually really intricate and lovely and fabulous drumming too. I don't think there's any cymbals on this record. So it's all this kind of anxious sort of subliminal pulsing of the drums and then these very sort of classically trained guitar sort of runs, sort of all this arpeggiated stuff and with real yeah, downer lyrics. Represents one other aspect of the 80s sort of gothy side of things. This is what happens when you idolize Lou Reed, get hooked on heroin, and start a band with somebody who winds up becoming a Jesus freak. That's the story of Felt. After Felt came Denim for a couple records, and then Go-Kart Mozart, which is his kind of neon colored, sort of convenience store themed, fluorescent lit hellscape. But anyway, this is lush and lovely and very sad and strung out. Great cover art. The Splendor of Fear has great cover art too. That's actually it's by Andy Warhol. It's the Chelsea Girls picture. Well, really the 80s. What riches did they not possess and produce? But here's the industrial side of things. Einstürzen der Neubauten, Berlin's
Nice.
finest. And this is a pretty great record. Drawings of OT, drawings of the patient OT in German. And it is much like a what the title promises, a journey into a kind of haunted headspace within the walls of an asylum. The only traditional form of instrumentation here, I think, is a bass guitar, probably. Everything else is basically some kind of object that is, stroked, struck, or otherwise manipulated to produce noise. And their sources of sound actually are pretty adventurous. And at one point, you've got percussion provided by Blixa Bargeld, the singer, getting punched by the other members of the band. They mic'd. But this has a few great tracks on it. My favorite being "Thirsty Animal," Durstiges Tier. Everything is kind of washed out, bleak, and empty sounding, but then these little figures appear and they loom larger and larger. Um, it's very cinematic and evocative. Lyrics are also very evocative. Unfortunately, they're in German, so most people will be at a bit of a loss there. Most Anglophones, anyway. But Einstürzen und Neubauten means collapsing new buildings. They made a bunch of records and they're still doing so, I think, but this is my personal favorite. I'm not their biggest fan overall, but this one is so sort of lean and desolate sounding that it gets high marks for me. Yes.
Effervescent. Okay, I'm wrong. I hate when you argue. I hate it. Blah, blah, blah.
Yada, yada, yada.
Gave me the creeps. S&M. It's Warhol.
It's
Yeah.
Warhol.
Cyclops.
Score.